Woo, woo, woo. It looks like we had some serious difficulties hopping on, but we are here nonetheless. Happy Tuesday to you all.
What's happening, each and every one of you?
Hey guys, if this is your first time with us, real quick intro for you.
I am Ola Buckley.
Hey, I'm Sway Buckley.
Marriedpreneur Life, the podcast, co-host, Marriedpreneur Life, the podcast.
Yes, and we are marriedpreneur strategists here helping other married entrepreneurs on this journey.
That's right. So we want to help those who are looking to generate more income, get greater clarity, and beyond all of that, they want to leave a lasting impact.
Yes. So here we are today. And ultimately, our goal is to help married entrepreneurs to live purposefully, powerfully, and profitably in sync. And I'm looking at like two different screens right here. So excuse my eyes kind of going all the places. I'm just trying to make sure that we are live on all the platforms because I don't want anybody, we put some great effort into making sure that this content is just like always, and we don't want you to miss it. That's the whole point of that. So it looks like we have issues on a couple of the platforms, but I think we're getting it taken care of right now. So with that being said, real quick for you, if you are a married entrepreneur, I know sometimes people are like, well, does that mean my spouse and I, we have to be in the same business together? Or does that mean that we have to be, doing whatever full-time on a full-time basis? Like, no, to all those things. We've realized over the years that there are three marriedpreneur types, like primary marriedpreneur types, and you'll likely be able to identify with one or more of these marriedpreneur types. And so these three marriedpreneur types are, we have the spousalpreneurs, and that's where one spouse is building the business while the other spouse is likely supporting. Maybe they're doing a 9 to 5. And then you have another marriedpreneur type, which is the indiepreneurs. Now that's where both spouses are building individual businesses, right? And then we have
the couplepreneurs.
The couplepreneurs.
That's where both of you are working as you're building the same business, doing it together.
Yes. So, you can identify with any of those marriedpreneur types, or you can
be a combination of two out of the three, or transitioning from one type to the other type.
There's that part too. Yeah. So you can find yourself doing all these different things. But the main thing is, I think it's really important to understand that there's no cookie cut way of saying, oh, I'm a marriedpreneur because we do this, whatever, together on a full-time basis. Like, that is just not the only way to build as a married entrepreneur. And so those are the three main types. So for us, we are a spousal and not spousal. We started off as spousal when we first got married. We are indie and couplepreneurs. Okay. So what we want to share with you, though, everything that we're going to be sharing is really encouraging, bringing tools to you that you can apply and see results with those tools. One tool that we have that we want to make sure that you're aware of is the latest episode on the Marriedpreneur Life podcast. And we're talking about niching down and getting your sales up. And so that is really some gold nuggets in there as far as marketing, messaging is concerned, and really connecting with your ideal clients as you all are building together. Okay, so and sometimes people say, well, my spouse is not building the business with me. But listen, if y'all are building the same family, you're building the same legacy, the business that either one of you are building is absolutely going to impact how you build your business, how you build your family. And so, having one person or one spouse only seemingly called to a business, it absolutely will impact the rest of the family. It will impact your spouse. It will impact your children. It will impact your community. But we're talking right now as far as your home. It impacts your home, and you can't deny that. So that's why we are so passionate about making sure that there's a resource for married couples who are building, because as we started over 10 years ago, we've been doing this full time together a little over 10 years. There were no resources that we found, and we searched high and low for resources specifically for married entrepreneurs, because a lot of times we would, invest in coaching and it would be just for an entrepreneur. And the thing is, there were systems that we were lacking and didn't know how to implement together that made a huge difference when it came to building together. And so we were like, you know what, we got to be a resource to others now that we started building our own systems and started answering the questions for help from even it started off with just those in our own community. And then that grew from there. So with that being said, we want to make sure you understand that there is some great content there on the Marriedpreneur Life podcast. You can listen on your favorite listening platform. And also with that, we are also going to be giving you today what we like to call our weekly Legacy Live. Okay, weekly legacy lesson, I should say, legacy lesson, which is live.
That we do live.
Yes. So today we're really going over the 5 signs or 5 red flags that
you need a growth plan.
You need a growth plan, a strategic growth plan. And as a married couple, we have to really dive into that piece because it's easy to say, okay, I'm going to get a growth plan, but then it ends up straining your marriage, or it ends up straining or draining your time and your energy. But you got a growth plan in place, right? But is it really aligned with your capacity and your vision and the things that God has called for you all to do in this season? That's the big question.
Yeah.
And so here we are. We're going to dive into these 5 red flags that may mean that you need a strategic growth plan. And then we're going to give you some answers. We're going to give you some solutions, some steps that you can actually take. So make sure you write these down, save these. We'll do our best to save this live and come back on and do that. And if you can start this, I'm going to make sure these other platforms are on and popping.
Okay. So these 5 signs, starting off with the first, it's interesting because we can feel as married entrepreneurs frustrated. So this first red flag, if you will, that you need a growth plan. I'll say that you are lacking a growth plan, a strategic growth plan. Number 1 is if you find yourself frustrated because you two are not getting the financial results that you know that you're capable of. Mm-hmm. And when that's not happening, you can devote so much time to building out this thing that you two are called to build out together, but feel like there's no fruit for our labor. There's no real tangible or a sense of tangible reward for all of our labor. And whenever that happens, that becomes frustrating because we're earning. And so that feeling of frustration is certainly a red flag when you realize, you know what, we're not earning what we are capable of, what our expertise should say that we're able to earn, what our ability to bring a transformation to our market.
And oftentimes you're going to feel that, especially, and it doesn't matter what the reason is, but let me just give you some real life examples of that we've actually walked couples through in this process. And a very popular one is when a couple is wanting to transition to, from doing their business on the side and to transition to doing it full time. That's when those red flags start saying, okay, wait a minute, how are we going to actually do this? What do we need to be doing? What do we need to have in place? Because the money is not adding up. And then with that, another sense of that is like, well, when a couple is desiring to scale, maybe you are doing your business full time, but you're just like, it's just still not hitting. It's not hitting the way that it needs to. I'm not getting the juice for the squeeze. Like, what do you say? How does it go? It's not, is it worth this? What do you say?
Yeah, the juice ain't worth the squeeze.
Or you're asking yourself, is the juice worth the squeeze? Right. And so those are some like real life conversations that happen when you're like, okay, what needs to change? And so our response to that are very simply put is to have a solid marketing plan in place. You want to have a solid marketing map in place, a solid marketing map. And the thing is, you can be an expert at what it is that you do, but that doesn't mean that you're an expert in marketing what you do. And so it doesn't have to be like you've had, an extensive amount of marketing background, but you do need to have a map that walks you all step by step to get to the goals that you know are possible. So with that though, if that's the case, so that's the answer, if you felt that way or feeling that way, and then that marketing map is a part of your strategic growth plan. Okay, so this is a reason why you would say, okay, yes, if you're saying yes to this, then it's likely that you need a strategic growth plan if that's a way that you've been feeling. Okay, that's a red flag. So another red flag.
Another red flag would be if you all are feeling overwhelmed, sort of under the weight of all of the many tasks that have to be done. And that feeling of overwhelm, or just like all of the tasks that have to be done, is just like it's weighing on you, it's sitting on your head. That sort of depression, and I'm not talking about just emotionally, I'm just talking about the sense of, oh, there's so much to do, and you just feel like you just want to say, you know what? And that feeling of overwhelm that just sort of sinks you down into your seat because of all the many things that have to be done, that is a sign that you are definitely in need of a strategic growth plan.
Yeah, and so the solution to that is having systems in place.
Clear systems.
That's going to be a part of the strategic growth plan. So you need to have systems that are going to help you take both of you, regardless if you're spousal, indie, or couplepreneurs. You want to have clear systems that are going to take both of your thoughts, those ideas that come and go throughout the day, even throughout the night. Like, you need to have a system of like, what do you do with these? Do you move on these, or do you wait for these, or do we go with your idea first, or do we go with my idea, or how do we merge these ideas? Like, what do we do? That's where the clear systems come in place. And those clear systems are really the framework for your strategic growth plan. Okay, so that's another red flag. If you're feeling like that or been feeling like that, then we're glad you're here. Okay, so you can get some answers today. Okay, another red flag that it's likely that you need a strategic growth plan. This is number 3.
And that is the feeling of being unfulfilled and unmotivated due to not operating in your gifts. When you feel like the best of what you have to bring to the table, your training, your talent, your expertise is not being utilized, not adequately at least, then you feel unmotivated, you feel unfulfilled, because it's like, well, why am I doing this? I'm not really doing the thing that's really my thing.
Yeah. And it's easy to feel drained. It's easy to not want to even get into the business of the business because you're just kind of over it, and you may not even realize it. That's the thing. Sometimes you're in it, but you don't even realize how unmotivated you are and really how unfulfilled you are. Now, there will be times that we will be required to do things that are not what we desire to do, but the day when that becomes the majority,
right,
that becomes the main thing, that becomes the primary area or aspects that you're focusing on, that you're spending your time on, that's when it's time to take a pause, to say, wait a minute, something's out of alignment, right? It's out of proportion. And we're not doing, like, we're not flowing in that way powerfully in sync as we ought to. So this right here, I would say simple solution for that is really making sure that you have a wealth roles system in place, meaning that I'm going to be focusing on the things that are primarily based on our system that we've implemented together, going to be primarily the ones that bring in not just financial monetization of that, but also is that it's connected to the fulfillment of what I'm called to do in my giftings, and likewise with you. But then when we are trying to just do stuff because it has to get done solely because of that, we will quickly find ourselves empty and frustrated, drained and questioning, doubting, wondering.
It's that feeling of feeling incompatible to what you're doing.
Absolutely.
Like, I'm not compatible with this task or with these tasks. Let me say it that way. And there's so many of them that then we begin to feel unmotivated and unfulfilled. And so having those wealth roles clearly defined allows us to work powerfully and compatibly.
And profitably. Come on, somebody. In sync. Now, the wealth role system, that ties directly into a strategic growth plan. Okay, so we're not just giving just random things. These all are part of a strategic growth plan, not just for entrepreneurs, but for marriedpreneurs. Because once again, as we mentioned before at the beginning, having a growth plan as an entrepreneur is not the same as having a strategic growth plan as a marriedpreneur. Priorities are different, goals are different, your flow is different. You have other people that you're taking into consideration. That's all different. And so being able to maximize what you two do and what you're created to do well is key, regardless if you're spousal, indie, or couplepreneurs. Okay, so that is, what number is that? That third, 3 or 4?
That's 3.
So that's the third red flag that is likely that you need a strategic growth plan as a marriedpreneur. Okay, the fourth red flag or sign that it's likely that you need a strategic growth plan.
Is when you feel unsure, that feeling of unsureness about what's the next step. What should I be doing next? What should we be doing next?
Mm-hmm.
It's like trying to walk down a path or walk up a path where you can't see the next step. So everything feels like a guess, like, oh, I'm guessing what is coming next. And that creates a lack of security, that creates an unsureness in our step. And when we can't step with assurance as we're building, then we're really not building, and definitely not with a strategic growth plan.
Yeah. And once again, and then doing it together, whether someone like the spouse is supporting or they're doing their own thing, or you are actually building in the same business together, all of this plays a role. But the thing is, you're building the legacy together. And so these emotions that come up when you're just trying to figure out, every step is so questionable. Every step is so unsure. Every step is so like, are we doing this right? Is this the right way? Or I don't know if this is going to work, but let me just throw it against the wall and see if it's going to stick. Like, we don't have time to have that, because that is not a strategy. Okay. That is guessing. You about this?
I was going to say a lack of certainty will certainly bring about lack.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that piece right there. Okay. So you're building, but the goal right here as a marriedpreneur couple is to build together, purposefully, powerfully, and profitably in sync. That doesn't happen overnight. That doesn't happen by happenstance. It happens only by great intentionality. And so this simple response and answer / solution to this issue, if this is what you've been feeling or going through as you all are building, would be to have what we call it MPOS, Marriedpreneur Operating Systems. And a quick breakdown of that would be, we have the big umbrella understanding, which is our annual legacy meeting or review. Within that annual legacy review, we break it down just as any corporation would do, and they have their annual reviews. We have to have our own annual reviews as well too. And then that breaks down into the quarterly reviews, and then the monthly, and then having a system that ties into the annual. And then we have the weekly, and then of course the daily, just hitting it. So each day, you don't have to try to figure out concerning your spouse, are we on the same page? Did we when did we drift? Or are we doing this the same? Are we thinking the same thing? Because that will happen if you don't have a system in place, such as MPOS. Create that yourselves as you all are walking through it, that's going to keep you accountable throughout the year on the main goals, right? On the main thing, keeping the main thing. And then as opportunities come in, what that does is it's kind of like a litmus, where it gives you clarity to say, okay, based on what we believe our goals are for this year, these opportunities that are coming in, they sound great, they look amazing, but are they in alignment for what we're actually building, or are they a distraction? Right? So you have to be able to know the difference. Otherwise, you're going to be pivoting and just following after opportunities versus actually saying, no, this is what we're called to do. And the opportunities that come, they're going to have to be in alignment with what we know we're called to do. Okay, so that's where Marriedpreneur Operating Systems, but that whole piece, understanding that, is tied directly into having a strategic growth plan as marriedpreneurs. So that's the fourth red flag. If you don't have this in place, or if you've been feeling this way, then this is what you need to have in place. Okay, so now you know what to do about it. And so ultimately, it's about having that growth strategy plan in place. Now, the fifth red flag or sign that you likely need to have a strategic growth plan in place is this.
When you struggle to have time as a married couple, I'm not talking about as, business partners, if you will, but talking about your marriage, when there's a struggle to even have simple date nights, simple date days, date lunches, and we're not having that time as a married couple, or our time together as a married couple is really spent or consumed by conversing about the business, then we're still, again, back in that business mode. So we're talking about specifically time as a married couple to do life together, to have that sense of connection and intimacy. When that's a struggle, that's a sign that we are in serious need of a strategic growth plan.
Yeah, and I would say this too. So let's just make it even more practical. When you are on having date night, you want to have that, or daytime, and you are not, and that daytime turns into, let me send this quick email off. Well, and you start talking about business. Or let me just finish this call. Or so what did such and such say about that deal or that opportunity? Did you reach out to such and such? And that's like the whole conversation. That wasn't even a date. That was just like a
Yeah,
business
there's nothing
meeting.
wrong with having that
none of
conversation.
yeah.
But when that consumes the
Right. When
conversation.
then that consumes the conversation during
Right.
that time, because that really is and ought to be a sacred time, because business can easily overtake and it just permeates like every area of our lives. And so if we're not intentional about that, what will happen is